Hello, and welcome to the 5 Core Life podcast with Will Moore, founder of More Momentum. Today's episode of the 5 Core Life, we're talking about mindful communication to improve your relationships and life with Brett Hill, the founder of the Language of Mindfulness. He's a best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, and dives really deep into how you can improve your own life through mindfulness and your relationships. Are you ready to fire all cylinders? If so, let's go.
Hey, how's it going?
Fantabulous to have you. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm excited to have you drop some knowledge on me and our viewers here.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll introduce you. You're a mindfulness communications coach. You got a book, you got a TEDx coming up. So why don't you kind of do some humble bragging and just sort of tell us how you got where you started. I noticed on your website you have a little bit of an interesting story, so you can kind of tell us how you got to this point and what you're doing now to try to help the world and other people.
Appreciate that. I've had a strange and, as they say, a long and strange story sometimes. I started out in technology, strangely enough. Well, actually, back a little bit before that, I was an entrepreneur. I opened up a bunch of stores when I was like 23. I had a whole, like, not a franchise, but like chains. Like, how the hell did that happen in music? And just kind of stumbled into it by, good luck and some not really knowing what I didn't know, kind of like, yeah, sure, I can open a store. Yeah, sure, I can run this. And pretty soon I had 5 of these things like in a year. And I was like, oh my God. And I was a young man and having a good time in the music business then. And one thing led to another, and I wound up in technology. And that worked out really well for me because I had a knack for being able to explain things in a way that people could understand. And so eventually I got the attention of Microsoft, and because I became an expert in one of their technologies, and they hired me to become what they call a technical evangelist. Yeah, there is such a thing. And so I was standing on stages all over the world explaining how things work and trying to make things understandable to people, and kind of really opened the door for me in terms of storytelling and connecting. So in the meantime, I was also very, very interested in things like mindfulness and meditation and psychotherapy, because I always had this desire to kind of get under the hood for how things actually work. Like, what really makes us tick? How do we really connect? What makes it all happen? And I was very, very interested in is there one thing that I could focus on in my life that would make everything better? So I have this fascination with this idea of like foundational principles. And I know you're there too with 5 Core. It's like, that's all about that, right? It's like these foundational principles that make everything work. And I was having the same kinds of thoughts. And what I came up with was communication. I felt like that was the thing that if you could, if in your life, you could focus on making that one thing better, it would improve everything in your life. Your business life, your personal life, your world, your organizations that you work with, student-teacher relationships, politics, romantic relationships, everything gets better because you spent 30 days focusing on how to listen, or how do I really talk about my feelings, or who is this other person I'm really thinking? Maybe I should be listening instead of thinking about what I'm going to say next, And so I sat down to study with some of the best people that I could find, and I started studying somatic psychotherapy with some amazing people, and it changed my life forever. And that's where I got introduced to mindfulness as a practice with other people, where it's not just sitting down and becoming aware of my world, which is absolutely a fabulous thing to do, but bringing that big awareness, that kind of big ear and this big sense of who you are in the world into relationship with other people.
Right.
And that's what it's, and that becomes my work at languageofmindfulness.com, is helping people, bring that into one-on-one and one-to-many interactions.
Yeah. So let's get into it.
Okay.
And I love that. And I couldn't agree more that, I like, there's so much out there. And as you mentioned, there's these, I've broken it down and there's these 5 core areas. Communication ripples through all of them. And it's like one of those things where things can get very overwhelming very quickly when you're trying to improve your life and do certain things. And it's like, if you could just focus on one thing that'll improve all, to me, I'm all in on that. Because not always, sometimes you focus on one thing and it doesn't always ripple through all of them. And communication definitely does. And it's more than just how you're, like you said, I mean, let's get into these things, right? It's like, it's how it's how you communicate your words succinctly, efficiently, without being a run-on, without talking too much about yourself. And then it's on the other person, being as our good friend, Mr. Dale Carnegie, who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People way back in the day. I'm guessing you've probably read that book.
Oh, yeah. Lots of people have,
just talks about, and the main gist being like, look, it's not rocket science, people. Like, put your focus on the other person, make them feel special, go out of your way to help them and serve, and you will never have any problems with your with your colleagues and work, with your friends. And that's so true.
Yeah, so there's a lot in what you just said, and a big part of this is to not take the advice to listen to others and like repeat their name and to create rapport, and in a way to just create rapport because you want something from people, but because that's authentic in you. You actually are in rapport. You're not just mimicking. You're not just repeating their name because that's going to cause them to feel good. Although you can do that. You can be very prescriptive about the behaviors that you do. And there are classes you can take on like, well, if you do things this way, if you mimic their behavior, if they cross their legs, if you cross your legs, that's a thing, leading and tracking, they call it in NLP, so that you can create the sense that I'm with you and we're in sync. But if you're doing it just to create the sense that I'm with you and you're in sync, rather than actually being in sync, then it's not so much about the authentic connection. And that's the distinction between really being real and inhabiting what I call inhabiting your authentic voice and pretending to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's go in. Well, how do people find that? How do people tap into that?
Well, you have to start with mindfulness. You have to start with slowing things down enough, and that's the thing a lot of people don't like to hear. Well, I got to slow things down, but you actually become a lot more productive if you are a lot less likely to focus on whatever the shiniest object in the room is. Yeah. It's like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay,
slowing down to go fast, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Down first, and then you can go fast.
Yeah, you have to slow down enough so that, like I think of it sometimes like a snow globe, you shake it up and all this stuff. If you slow down enough for the debris to settle, suddenly the scene comes into focus. And then your priorities can automatically restructure so that you see exactly what you need to do, coming from a place of a better informed landscape. You literally can see, oh, I didn't even see that this is the button I need to push because I was so busy trying to figure out all this other stuff.
Right.
So once you get to a place where you're in touch with your own self enough to realize that, I'm so nervous about whether or not I'm going to get this promotion, that I can't see that the most likely way for me to do that is to just be more real with my job and my people, and suddenly this becomes the priority that I need to do, rather than worried about the outcomes. And when you get to that place, you walk into the next meeting, you walk into the next dialogue, conversation, from a much more solid place, because now you're in a place where you know what you're doing, you're connected to it. And when you speak from that place, it has this gravity and this authority in it that you can't fake, because you're not trying to wing it, you're not guessing, you're actually in what is your truth.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of power.
Very well said. And so now, and when you're working with people, do you work with people one-on-one? Do you work with people on in groups? Do you have like online courses? How do you get this message across and help people?
Right now, I'm working with people one-on-one, and I have like people can just go to my website and schedule a session. We'll talk and see how to work things out. But it's very specific because people are in a very different place. I am going to be doing some groups later on this year, but right now it's very much about let's just get you from A to D as in a way that we can measure, because I will start out with the measurement, like what's your mindfulness status now and what do you want to work on? And everybody's different because some people are very backed off and they need tips to move forward, to get out there more. Some people are too out there. They're like overtalk everybody and they're not really listening and they're not really connecting. And they've got to step back and go, what happens to your life whenever you don't speak?
So it's different, Matt. I'm glad you pointed that out, because there's not, in the world of trying to help yourself, there's generally not a one size fits all. Although in a way there are, like there's universal principles. But what you got to then do is you got to take that principle and you got to look at each individual, and everybody's got different, personalities. Like you said, some are over talking, some are the quiet ones, and you got to say, okay, how do we get this across, this principle we want you to learn, and to how to be mindful and to do these types of things in the best way you can do it.
Yeah, and you have to start with, what are your strengths, right? And lean into those strengths. So it's very, like I said, it's very personalized in the sense that I'll listen to somebody and go, okay, well, you're very strong here, here, and here. So we're going to land in those, really orient to that in a much more solid way so that you get kind of who you are in a deeper way, kind of get it more in your bones rather than this idea. Because lots of times people are acting out of their fears that they're not living up to some idea they have about themselves.
Right.
And when you're in that gap, when you're projecting yourself into the future and you're feeling the anxiety of that gap, it's very hard to be strong in the moment.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. That makes a lot of sense. Go ahead. Were you going to say something else?
No. I mean, that's basically the first kind of thing I'll sort out, and then help people kind of navigate to where they can then, once they embrace kind of the facts of who they really are, then the notion of who you want to be becomes much less. I mean, you don't give up your idea of I want to be more or have more, but you come about it through a much more empowered way. And it just sort of flows from the truth of your own strengths. And it first requires a fair amount of courage to sit down and go, well, this is what's true about me. I really am not that great at this, or I really am really good at this, and really just embracing all of it, your weaknesses and your strengths, because that's the only way you're really going to move forward.
Yeah, no. So you're saying in your system, you try to identify who they are first and then move on to where they want to end up?
Yeah, it's being, then doing. It's like what you want to do moves authentically out of your being, out of who you are. And you can flip the switch, but what happens is you get ahead of yourself and you get there. And I think this is a little like your story and some others. It's kind of like you get somewhere in life and then you realize, wait, there's more than just getting this. There's service. That's a big part of what I need to do. And you can fast forward that to where you sit right now, right? You can embrace all of that today.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead, please.
I was just kidding. So my system's slightly different, and I'm wondering, and this is an interesting conversation because I want to see it from the other side. The way I typically do it with people is because I know, well, I do have a brief quiz that they take to sort of let them know where they stand in each course. I agree. It's just from a 10K view of like, okay, who am I? What am I doing? Like, what am I focusing on? Where am I weak? What areas of life? Where am I strong? But then I kind of quickly go into like, hey, let's figure out where you want to end up. And I call it my back to the future exercise, because to me, when I do that with them, it's like, okay, regardless of who you are and what's going on now, I think it's very confusing for a lot of people to know, like, okay, well, what are the good parts of me? What are the bad parts? Like you said, strengths, all that. I think it helps to clarify when you say, okay, where do you want to end up at the end of the day? Like when it's your funeral and you're being eulogized, what do you want said about you? And I break it up by core, like your relationships, your career and your finances, your physical health. And then when they do that, it sort of is like instantly gets rid of all the BS and all the noise and says like, this is who I want to end up as. And then we go back. It's like called the back to the future exercise, right? And I say, okay, that's who you want to be. All right, where are you now? Let's make a list of the habits and the things that you're doing that are hurting you, and then let's start putting things.
Yeah, so it's very similar in some ways, because that's what you're doing is a great service with that, because it's a clarifying question, right? It's sort of like by the reason I think that works is because when you project yourself out and say, what's the impact I want to have? What you're doing is you're naming aspects of yourself already alive in you that you haven't actually necessarily fully informed or stepped into, right? And so in a certain way, it's like a little, I don't want to say a game, but it's like you've projected into the future kind of the essence of it, because it's like, what do you want people to say about you? You're phrasing it in the terms of impacts. What kind of impact do I want to have? And if you dial underneath that, it's like, who do I need to be to have the impacts I need to have, right? And so that's the question that I start with in a way. It's kind of like, and in order to answer that question, it's like, who are you now?
Right.
Who am I now? And what you'll find very often is that the core of a person has those qualities that they want to be known for, recognized already in them. It's just a matter of embodying that today in a way that becomes actionable.
I love it. Okay, so let's speaking of action, let's talk about, do you have, just to kind of give the audience some nuggets here without, giving away your whole course, but like some of the top ways that you, tricks or I shouldn't say tricks, tips, habits, for them to develop in order to be able to, get this mindfulness and start, using it.
Well, yeah, and thanks for asking. There are quite a few in my little toolkit, and one of them is obviously just the basic, straight up, what they would call like a mindfulness meditation. Some people don't meditate very well, but and it's not because they can't, but they don't try. And so people that are looking to become a little more mindful, and it's not like you got to go sit on a mountaintop, just the science is in on all this, and just 5 or 10 minutes can really, really make a difference. You can actually change the structure, the actual anatomy of your brain in a way that's very beneficial. The parts of your brain that have to do with higher cognitive functions, like not being reactive. Like, let's just say I want to be less reactive in my life. Instead of spitting out the first thing that comes to my mind whenever someone irritates me, I want to have a pause and be able to consider what's the right thing to say here. And is there a better thing than me just saying, well, screw off, what do you know? Is there something better than that, And there generally is, but you have to have a neurological capacity to actually not be reactive. And we can frame it as bad habits, but those habits are a function of what is wired in your brain. It's just like, what's the shortest circuit to fire, the easiest circuit to fire neurologically, what neural network fires the fastest and the easiest, that's going to be what you do. And so if you want a different one to fire, you have to do what I call, if you want to be mindful under stress, you have to practice when you're not. And so if you want to have a different kind of response under stress, you have to practice those responses when you're not under stress. So if they get wired up, it's no different than learning to play a guitar or piano or learning to do public speaking. You have to stand up in front of the mirror and do your talk, right? And that's the way you get better at things. So the number one thing to do is to just do some practice. At my website of languagemindfulness.com/now, there's a page that has what I call a template, a blueprint for getting started. And it's really very simple. So you go to that and you just practice the basic mindfulness meditation. And there's a bazillion of these all over the web.
Right. I think it's right. I think it's not right. It's good. You give them a tip to get going. 'Cause some people are like, well, how do I start? But it's just more like the act of it itself. There's a different.
You have to do the work. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
And I have one other tip I want to throw out there, if you don't mind.
Please.
And that's that. So sometimes people don't like that because it's like sitting down, being still. And one of the things that happens whenever you sit down, you kind of like turn yourself inside. You start to become aware of what's really going on in this personhood of mine, this frame of mine, is you realize I don't really have a lot of control over what I'm paying of my thoughts. People kind of like, that's really uncomfortable for people. And so another way to go about this is to decide. So the definition of mindfulness, according to Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's sort of the kind of the de facto guy that everybody falls back to when it comes to definitions on this, is paying attention on purpose. So there has to be an intention. I mean to pay attention here. And then in the moment, which means I'm paying attention to what's happening right now. I'm not thinking about tomorrow or the next day or yesterday. And then non-judgmentally. So I'm not saying, oh, I suck at this, or this is great, or I'm awesome, or I'm terrible, or somebody else is awesome or terrible. Instead, you're just paying attention to what your experience is. Okay, so that means that if I step out on my porch and I see a beautiful cloud and sunset going by, and I notice that's beautiful, and what's that feel like to see something beautiful? And you just let yourself go, oh, that feels pretty good. And you notice that it feels good, and you say, I'm just going to hang out here for a few seconds with this feeling good. So just noticing the natural beauty, the things that, what I call things that light you up. So one of my early exercises is what lights you up? And taking notes. Oh, these are the things that light me up. Faces, beauty, beautiful women, beautiful men, a gorgeous song, a great dance, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Just notice that it automatically, without thinking about it, causes you to go, wow. And when you notice those wow moments, you mindfully notice that you go, oh, I'm having a wow moment. Well, that guy Brett said, just hang out with this and let it kind of inform me. Well, wow, it feels pretty good to feel this wow. And how does that change you physically, somatically, intellectually, emotionally? And just hanging out with that for just an extra 5 seconds. That is a mindfulness practice.
Yeah, no, I love that. Right. It's kind of just ties into, it's like focus on the good and don't not on the bad. It's a universal principle.
Well, you were talking about, I saw one of your Instagram posts about hanging out at the intersection and traffic was going by, right? And you're going, hey, wait, I don't have to be annoyed, Right. So there you go. You woke up right then and said, I don't have to be in this trance of being annoyed. I can choose.
And it all ties to habits and just you get in the habit of things, right? And it's like,
yeah, exactly.
If when you're taking that left at a green light, you're in the habit of being like, oh, and you're just gonna get in that habit, and you're gonna have that awful feeling every single time it happens.
No,
like you said.
No, who wants that? Who wants to drive pissed off all the time, right? That's not a fun experience.
Not fun. So it's like, okay, being aware and being like, okay, here we go. That really is the key of life. And mindfulness, I use the word awareness, you use mindfulness, same thing. It's like being aware of like what's going on and okay, I'm about to go down, my lower self is about to take over. I'm about to go down the rabbit.
Yeah.
I'm about to,
exactly.
What I call it the fixed victim versus the growth owner. The fixed victim is about to take over, then you go,
yeah, exactly, right. Oh, that guy, he made me miss that light, and you know what? I'm not really in a hurry, but I'm still going to be annoyed about it. It's kind of
right, and it's okay to be like, oh, but like I said, once I in this example you're using, I kind of was like, all right, wait, what could I be doing right now to have positive vibes and to elevate my mood and my consciousness, and I put on that podcast that I was listening to with Tim Ferriss and Jerry Seinfeld, and I was like, okay. Yes, and I just started getting these. Well, I didn't even think about or look at the light. Right? I couldn't even tell you how long I was at the light. And that's the whole thing. If you can catch yourself in those moments when you're going down the path and so.
Right, and so instead of being annoyed, I just said, hey, you know what? I'm going to look at that tree. I like trees. Trees are cool. And I look at the leaves and watch them do their thing, and I'm going, that's pretty awesome, and it's like, it's just sitting there being a tree, and all I have to do is notice, and it's a much better experience than being annoyed at the guy in front of me for being a jerk, because they're everywhere, and if you let them control you, they will.
Love it. Right. Okay. So, and now let's get into, let me ask you some questions on, I mentioned the word habits. I use gamification. I mean, you probably heard me use
Yeah.
that in the, I'm not sure if you have any context for the type of your stuff you're doing, but let me just give a brief kind of context. When I say gamification, I don't mean in the traditional sense, like actually using, like video games, but basically reducing the friction to help people take the actions that will lead to their best lives, that will lead to them being their happiest selves. And there's a lot of little habits and ways that we can do that, right? So for instance, the one that the post we were just talking about, I was kind of gamifying patience in my mind. I was reducing the friction of the frustration of being patient by switching gears and going, okay, I can listen to this, and that alleviates that pressure, right? And sometimes it has to do with competition and scoring. And do you have any ways that you feel like you're gamifying mindfulness and communication?
I think, yes, I do. Although I wouldn't put it in those terms, but I understand what you're saying, and the elements of that I hear you talking about are, first of all, to notice that something is going on that you can recast, right? So whatever the experience is that you want to reframe, to me, that's the key moment. That is the moment that you woke up from your trance, right? So it's sort of like in mindfulness, it's like, let's say I'm doing a meditation and I'm focusing on my breath. So I sat down and I say, okay, I'm going to focus on my breath for 5 minutes. Can I do that? Probably not, even though it sounds trivial, right? But you sit down and you said, and then, 10 seconds later, you're going, oh, I really should have said this to that guy, or, oh, I wish I did, because that's the way our brains work. And so,
right. So you're kind of hacking, right? So how do you hack your brain to go, oh, wait, yeah, we want to do this? Like, how do you trick it? Because we have these like instincts that take us in the wrong direction.
Well, the thing is, once you, it's through practice, right? So you go, oh, I'm having this thought. And so the trick is to notice that you're having the thought, oh, I should have been doing this. I should have said that. I got to do this thing. And then just come back. You just come back to paying attention to the thing that you want to pay attention to, which is always, almost in mindfulness, some body experience, because your body's not complicated, right? It's kind of like, oh, breathing. Okay, I'm breathing. What's it feel like to breathe? Just paying attention in a really refined way to that experience, because you choose to, is training your brain to take the focus and take your sensitivity to pay attention to, hello, whoa, there's a powerful idea. To pay attention to the thing that you choose to pay attention to.
Right.
And while it sounds like it's simple, and it is simple, so you come back to pay attention, and then you just keep coming back and back and back. Now, here's another thing you do then. So now that you've got this practice of I'm taking control of what I choose to focus on, and I'm bringing a very high quality of attention to it. Now you're in conversation with somebody, right? So you're talking to them, and you're just on automatic. And instead of being on automatic, you do the same thing. You come back and go, what's my experience like of talking to this person? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel excited? Do I feel annoyed? Do I feel interrupted? Do I feel enthused? And you start to notice, what's the impact of other people on me? And you'll also start to pay attention to how you impact other people. And so part of this game of, if you call it gamification, another technique I talk about is zooming. So it's kind of like here's a technique. You're watching TV, and you see you see some picture on the TV, some people talk. Imagine for a second, what is in the room? What's where are the cameras? Where are the lights? Who else who's off the screen that you don't see?
Okay.
Right? Because that's the reality of the people that you're seeing, right? And so you're zooming back out for a minute and going, oh, what's really happening here is that they're on a set and there's cameras, everything. That's what's really happening. I'm just in this experience of them moving things along. And that's cool. You want to do that, right? You don't want to be this way all the time. This is just a practice. You back up and go, oh, yeah. And then like in a movie theater, I'll do this all the time. Back in the day when we used to go to movies, I'd stop for a second. I go, oh, and look, I'm in the theater. It's got these exits. There's all these people. Put myself back in my seat just to notice my own reality.
Stepping back, getting the 10K view of what we see in front of us isn't always the big picture, and then I assume taking that into your own life and sort of saying, okay,
exactly,
what's in the room, what's around me, what's really going on. That's
really going on.
That's a good. It's kind of like the gamification. I didn't describe it the best. It's not your fault, but
no, I understand what you mean.
Little tips and tricks to help you to get to where you want to be, right? So you want to be mindful. The problem, I think, with anybody trying to get a message across is like, if you just tell somebody, catch yourself when you're doing it, that doesn't work, right? Because what's going to happen is they go, well, I tried for a day or two, it didn't work, and so I'm giving up on that, right? You got to give them something that is going to ease that process into where they do it enough times and they want to take the action, or there's something that makes them
absolutely
take it, that it then becomes a habit and it becomes automatic.
No, you're spot on about that. And a lot of people, a lot of teachers, a lot of mentors really don't get that. They tell people just jump to the end and keep jumping until you get there. But I so appreciate that there are techniques, and there are techniques that matter, and the techniques that matter replace themselves, right? It's like so I so appreciate the fact that you need to, from a teaching perspective, you need to give people things that they can do so that they understand why you're trying to get them to do the core practice, why the core practice matters. In some way, you can say, well, if you want to learn to ride a bicycle and you fall off twice and you go, forget that, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there's a
why. You got
exactly.
Why do I want to do this? Why, deep that part of the brain where it goes like, yes, like we're going to do this and this is awesome and I want to, versus willpower.
Right.
I got to. Willpower runs out of steam eventually, no matter how good you are, no matter how.
That's so true.
You're going to run out. It's got to connect on a visceral level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Connect on a visceral level is the key, because that's what fuels your intent and your actions in a consistent way every day. Otherwise, it's just an idea. If you're trying to live up to somebody's expectation, you might what you're feeling. So what are you feeling viscerally? You're like, right. That's not a sustainable place, and the actions you take from that place are going to shatter easily because you're not coming from a place of empowerment. You're coming from a place of fear. And that can move you too, but it's not going to move you in the healthiest way.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So we're wrapping up here, but let's take a few questions. So a couple questions. The first was from Rocky, which, by the way, that was my name when I was born. So
is that right? Oh, wow, that's cool.
My parents were hippies. I was born Rocky Wooten Thomas Clay Moore, and my sister.
I like it.
True story, was born Puff Sunpath Moore. So that tells you.
Oh man, true hippies.
True hippies.
True hippies.
So Rocky, it was asking, hi, what is the topic? Or sorry, that's not the one I was looking at. He asked what we're talking about. I answered that one. From Joan Tabby Joan, she says, what is the best way to have discipline? What's your take on that?
Discipline is tough, and the best way to have discipline, I think we talked about it already, is to connect to the attractor, right? So it's like you said before, if you fast forward, and this is kind of an intense exercise, what do you want people to say about you when you die, or after you're gone? What's your legacy? What's your impact? And if you hold the space of who do I need to be, like I said before, who do I need to be to get to have the impact I want to have, and you feel it in a somatic, I call it somatic, you call embodied, visceral way. You feel the potential life that you have, the goodness that you do actually have in your core, the you that loves, the you that lights up, the you that wants to help. Then from that place, when you look at the things that are disempowering you, which means the decisions that you make that are not in alignment with your own progression, and you you look at that from a place of, okay, even those actions I'm doing to actually be good to myself, it's not evil that I'm not disciplined. It's just that it's not working. So when I'm doing things that aren't perfect for me, I'm still doing them for me, but you can then embrace that and then go, and I know I can do something for me differently that's better.
Yep.
And so you kind of wake up with a different mindset, and it can help you step into what I call the heat that you need to, the part of you that goes, oh, I don't really want to do that meditation. I don't really want to lift those weights. I don't really want to not eat that food. I don't really want to do the thing I need to do to get where I want to go. But when you take a moment, you go, but that really is who I am on a more fundamental level. That helps you access the energy you need to break through.
Love it. Yep. Okay. And then this other question, bucket list coach Rosalind. I may try to take a stab at answering this one, and we can collaborate on it. She says, can you tell us how meditation helps people improve their habitual habits, basically? So yeah, that's a great question. To me, the way I'd answer that is, anything that you can do that's like we were saying earlier, there's these universal principles in life. To me, like mindfulness, being aware, being able to, all these things we're just talking about, get a 10K view, understand, this is the person I want to end up being. This is where I am now. These are the things I need to change. Anything you can do to help your habits to start going in that direction is the best thing you can do for yourself. Because remember, habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting us. They're going to do their thing over time. And so if you're not meditating, or if you don't have that 10 to 15 minutes a day, you're kind of screwing yourself in a way, because you're leaving out an important aspect that if you were doing it is going to help to get you to all those things we were just talking about, to become more mindful, more aware. And so, that's one thing. And that's basically sounds like a huge part of what you're doing and what you're focusing on, is getting people into the habit of doing that 10 to 15 minutes a day. And when you do that, doors just start opening, right?
That's the key thing.
Connecting the dots. You start saying, wait, okay, I see this now. I see this. Oh, I'm doing this. And it's amazing. So that to me is how they type.
Yeah. And you said it well there when you said doors start opening. And the key point I like to make about it is that they are doors that were always already there. You just didn't notice them before. Right. And that's the key thing. It's like suddenly you go, oh my God, the key to my cage has been right in my hand the whole time. I've just been so freaked out about the fact that it's closed that I didn't even know I had the key in my hand. And you have to calm down and get present enough. And to add one more thing about the meditation aspect of it is, when you do this work, you begin to be a lot happier, because you start to realize my moment right now is pretty good, and it's not like I can't be happy unless I am these things. It's like I already am in a pretty good moment, because now, when the end, it's all now, right? So this is getting into the more metaphysical layers of things, but it's all just now in the end. And so it's sort of like, if I just am okay right now, and then I look at where I want to be, it's kind of like, oh, well, my path to that becomes much more clear, because I'm not, where I'm at is not bad. So who am I and how do I now move forward becomes a much more straightforward process.
Yeah. Love it. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell people where they can find you and get into your coaching and learn more about what you're doing and help them to.
Sure. Well, I have a website at languageofmindfulness.com. So I'm sorry for the big URL, but you can Google it too. And on that page, there's a free coaching session where we can chat and see how this might work for you. And we can, and in that session, I actually will craft for you some specific things. That's no charge to anybody. And then there's a page there for the newsletter, and a page there, mindfulness meditation, to get started on a mindfulness meditation. So, connect up there. And I've got a book coming out in fall, and TEDx talk in the fall as well.
Yeah, where's your TEDx talk?
It's going to be in Missouri, so it's at the state university there.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then,
and I saw. Do you teach people how to get to do TEDx talks? Is that something that you help people with?
I have a page on, because I got really involved with, I'm going to give a TEDx talk, and kind of made it a goal, right? And so I sent out like 57 applications, and I thought there's this whole workflow to this thing. And
Right.
so I thought, and I had so many people say, well, how did you do that? But I wrote a page, an FAQ on TEDx. I call it TEDx 101. Again, on languagemindfulness.com, there's a tab TEDx 101. And so I wrote a PDF that's about 12 pages on what you need to do. So people that are interested in that you can get on a TEDx stage, but there's some things you need to know. And I wrote them all up in this, and to make it easy for people. And also I help with the communications aspect if you're looking for help with how to be more present on stage and how to connect with your audience. Because like in my talk, I take people through a mindfulness exercise like right away. I get them all to connect with each other right off the bat as a way of deepening the process.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I'm actually filling this out right now. I want to, I've done a TEDx talk, but I'm curious to see, the
Cool. Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
I just filled it out. So, okay. Well, thank you so much, Brett. This has been amazing. Thanks for being on the show. And
you bet.
everyone knows where to find you. Keep doing what you're doing, helping people build momentum. I love how you're doing it through mindfulness, becoming aware, figuring out where you want to end up, what actions you need to start taking now, and changing it.
And same to you. I really appreciate your work and the clarity and the focus that you have, and the way you you keep it really practical. And I've been kind of hanging out with your stuff for the last couple of days because I knew it was coming on. It's like, I'm pumped up. It's kind of like, it's really, really nice work. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, Brett. All right. We'll talk soon, buddy.
Bye now.
Okay. Take care.
That's it for the 5 Core Life. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button on this video and pound that subscribe button so you get notified when new episodes drop. Also, please fill out the free 5 Core Life Evaluator quiz. It's a great way to get a baseline of where you are in the 5 cores and which of the 5 cores you need support. In addition, you'll get some actionable advice that you can apply and start improving your life in the areas that you need it most. That's it for today's episode of the 5 Core Life Podcast. Have a wonderful day.
Get moving. Gain momentum. Join the movement. Join Emmett by going to moremomentum.com to take a free life evaluator quiz on where you currently stand in each of your 5 cores.